They say the older you get, the quieter birthdays become. I used to think that meant fewer balloons, fewer candles, fewer people singing off-key in your kitchen while you pretended not to tear up. Turns out it also means fewer voices who remember you're still alive. I woke up on my 71st birthday at 6:12 a.m., the same way I have for the last decade, because my left knee always complains first, then the right one joins in, forming a sort of duet of creaking joints. The house was cold. I hadn't bothered turning on the central heating since March. The old unit rattled like it was possessed. Instead, I shuffled into the kitchen, wrapped in my faded navy robe, and switched on the little brawn drip machine I'd bought in 1998. It wheezed, gurgled, spat once, then did its job. Reliable. Unlike most people these days. While the coffee brewed, I made my breakfast. Half a bowl of steel-cut oats with cinnamon, 2 walnuts I crushed with the flat of a knife, and the very last spoon of honey from the jar my wife, God rest her, had bought the winter before she passed. I kept the jar for the smell. Lavender. Marie always insisted lavender made mornings gentler. I sat at the small wooden table by the window, looking out at the strip of garden I no longer had the back to tend. The hydrangea was blooming, light blue, like it used to be when she was here. I murmured, "You'd have smiled at that, Marie," and took my first careful sip of coffee. The kitchen clock clicked. 6:45, 7:10, 7:40. My phone sat face up beside my bowl. A small thing, black, cracked at the corner. Usually by this time, my nephew Daniel would have sent a meme or a text. My son and I hadn't spoken much this past year unless he needed something, but even he used to remember dates. Used to. That phrase covered too much of my life. But today, silence. By noon, it felt like the silence had weight. I cleaned the counter, washed the bowl, wiped the table twice. I dusted the bookshelf in the living room, even though I'd done it 2 days before. I rearranged Marie's framed photo on the mantel. I vacuumed the hall carpet. I found excuses to walk past my phone. At 2:16 p.m., it buzzed. My heart actually skipped, ridiculous thing to do at my age. I grabbed it quickly, wiping my palms on my robe before picking up. Daniel's name blinked on the screen. Finally, I whispered and answered. "Hey, Uncle, listen, quick question for you. Do you happen to remember the transfer pin you gave us? The one for emergencies? Not a hello, not a happy birthday, just business." I swallowed. "Good afternoon, Daniel." "Yeah. Hey, sorry, it's been crazy here. But can you tell me the pin again? We tried the old one, but the bank's rejecting it. And we're kind of short on time." "Ah, of course." This was the real tradition now. "What's the rush?" I asked, keeping my voice even. My wife always said I had a way of making silence louder than sound. On the other end, shuffling, whispering. Then Daniel exhaled. "It's nothing big. Just, we need to cover something for the house. The mortgage company messed up the auto pay again. If you could send like 12,400, just until Tuesday. We'll get it back to you, swear. $12,400. I repeated slowly, as if tasting the number. Bitter. "Yeah, sorry for the last-minute thing, Uncle. We totally spaced today. We've been running around. We'll celebrate your—" He stopped. I waited. He didn't correct himself. "My what?" I asked. Your week. Your week's been stressful, you said the other day. Anyway, could you just give us the pin? We really need it." So that was that. My birthday forgotten, but my bank access remembered perfectly. "I see," I said quietly. Daniel must have heard something shift in my tone, because he added quickly, "Uncle, don't be like that. We'll make it up to you later, all right? We love you, you know that. The way people love an ATM machine when it's working." I looked around my kitchen, the chipped tile by the stove, the tea towel Marie embroidered with tiny lemons, the magnet shaped like a piano my niece had given me when she was 6. Most of the people who had ever cared about me lived only in this house now, or in memory. "Daniel," I said, "I can't give you that pin right now." "What? Why not? It's not a good day for it." "Uncle, come on. Don't make this weird. It's just money." Yes, for them, it was always just money. For me, it was years of labor and the last pieces of a life I'd built with someone who actually remembered things like birthdays. "We'll discuss it another time," I said. "Have a good afternoon." "Uncle, don't hang up." "Uncle? Hey." I pressed the red button. The house was quiet again. But the quiet felt different now. No longer heavy, but sharp. I stood, poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, and looked at my reflection in the window. A thin old man, hair whitening at the temples, eyes clearer than they'd been in months. They forgot my birthday, I murmured to no one. But in the next breath, something steadier unfolded in my chest. And maybe that's the last thing they'll ever forget to do. I didn't know yet what I would do, only that something inside me had shifted, something that had been soft-turned, finally, to steel. This was the day they forgot my birthday. But it was also the day I remembered who I was. People like to pretend that exploitation happens all at once, one big betrayal, one dramatic moment that shatters trust like a drop plate. But in my experience, it begins quietly, softly, like a slow leak under the sink you don't notice until the cabinet floor buckles. And by the time you finally open the door, the damage has already spread. I sat at my kitchen table that evening, birthday card still unopened on the counter. Not from Daniel, of course. From a pharmacy that sends automated coupons. The house creaked under the settling night. My coffee had gone cold. I wasn't really drinking it. I just needed something to hold while I stared at my bank statements printed neatly in a folder marked household. It was a habit from Marie's days. She used to say every home had two heartbeats, the people and the paperwork. When one stops, the other is soon to follow. I opened the February statement first, then March, then April. 7 years of quietly bleeding. 7 years of family emergencies. 7 years of just until Friday. 7 years of God bless you. Uncle, you're the only one who understands. At first, I helped willingly. It felt good. To be needed, to be useful, to feel like the last branches of my family tree still leaned toward me for shade. But page after page, the numbers painted a different story. $38,000. Tuition and books for the girls. Except the girls dropped out the next semester. I found that out through Facebook. $52,600. Storm damage repairs. Insurance covered most of it. My money covered jet ski I saw in a summer photo. $19,300. Medical bills. No bill ever existed. The charge was made at a private clinic that specializes in cosmetic injections. $2,000. $700. $1,200. $1,950. Month after month after month. Little withdrawals. Big ones. Some labeled. Some not. And always the same justification. Uncle, you know we'll pay you back. Except they never did. Not $1. I'd given Daniel access to my online banking years ago, back when my eyesight wasn't so sharp and Marie had just passed. I thought it'd be easier to have someone help with online forms, transfers, the things that used to overwhelm me in grief. He had taken that access and treated it like inheritance. Some of the transactions carried a bitter irony. A few were made on dates that mattered to me. June 2nd, Marie's death anniversary. $4,200 at Signature Sands Resort. A family getaway, apparently. September 14th, my wedding anniversary. $1,178 at a steakhouse I'd never been invited to. And then I reached the most recent statement. June 11th, my 71st birthday. 2 charges. $3,940.22, Delta Airlines. $3,860.99, Wynn Las Vegas premium booking. I stared at the page, so long my eyes watered. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday. They'd celebrated it without me. I imagined them at the airport, boarding Group B, carrying overpriced margaritas while joking about how the old man probably won't even notice. I imagined them checking in at the Wynn, spinning slot machines, eating steak that cost more per ounce than my weekly groceries. And I imagined Marie beside me, her face saying what her words would never have allowed. They don't love you. They love your wallet. I closed the statement slowly, as if gentleness could somehow soften the truth. The radiator clicked in the hallway. A bus groaned outside. The refrigerator hummed like a tired animal in the corner. My entire house felt suddenly enormous. Too many rooms, too many memories, too little warmth. I rose, walked to the living room, and sat in Marie's old armchair. The one with the floral pattern worn thin, where she used to rest her elbows while reading. I whispered, "Why didn't I see it sooner?" Of course I knew why. Because people my age don't want to believe the world has stopped needing us. Because when you lose a spouse, you cling to whatever threads of family remain, even if those threads cut deep. I closed my eyes. I remembered each transfer, each phone call, each apology they gave for not visiting, for not checking in, for not remembering holidays. And then I remembered the tone Daniel had used earlier that day. I'd heard urgency, but no affection. I heard frustration, but no shame. For the first time, I heard the truth. They expected my help, expected my pen, expected my savings, expected me to disappear quietly when they were finished squeezing the fruit. I opened my eyes. I reached for my phone, scrolled through messages, and saw it clearly. Every conversation between us was a financial transaction wearing the mask of family. Not once in 6 months had Daniel asked how I was sleeping. Not once had he asked whether my knee still hurt in the cold. Not once had he come by to fix the broken porch light he'd promised to repair last year. But he could recite my 4-digit PIN faster than my birthday. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. They forgot my birthday, I said into the stillness. But they remembered my bank access. The house gave no answer, only the soft hum of a home that had learned silence long before I had. I leaned back in the chair and folded my hands over my stomach, an old man in a dim living room, lit only by the last strips of sunlight on peeling wallpaper. For the first time in years, something inside me shifted. Not sadness, not anger, but clarity. This wasn't just neglect. It was theft. This wasn't just forgetfulness. It was entitlement. This wasn't just a bad birthday. It was the end of something and the beginning of something else. I didn't yet know exactly what I'd do, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to be their walking ATM anymore. They wanted money. They were about to learn the cost. And the bill would come due very, very soon. I didn't plan the visit. It happened the way storms start. Quietly, with a sky that looks almost peaceful until you realize the clouds are too heavy to hold. 2 days after my birthday, I found myself standing at Daniel's front door with a pie dish covered in foil and a knot in my stomach. Marie's old habit. Show up with food when you need to say something difficult. Except this wasn't going to be difficult. It was going to be clarifying. The neighborhood was one of those aggressively new developments. Identical beige houses with identical square lawns, identical SUVs, and identical driveways. The kind of place where nobody truly lives, they just perform living. I rang the doorbell. Inside, I heard the muffled thump of footsteps, a burst of laughter, then Daniel's voice. "Yeah, hang on, I'll get it." The door swung open, and there he was, my nephew, 34 years old, in a t-shirt that probably cost more than my monthly phone bill, holding a half-eaten sandwich. He blinked at me as if I were a door-to-door salesman. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" I forced a small smile. "Thought I'd stop by. I brought that apple crumble your aunt used to make." His expression tightened just slightly. Annoyance, not surprise. "Oh, yeah, sure. Come in." He stepped aside, but not warmly. More like someone moving an obstacle out of the doorway. I stepped in and immediately noticed things I hadn't before. A brand new leather sectional couch, cream-colored. A 85-inch curved OLED TV mounted on the wall. A chrome espresso machine that belonged more in a boutique hotel than in a family kitchen. A glass display case with sneakers lined up like museum pieces. My money, I thought. Everywhere I looked. "Wow," I said softly. "New furniture?" Daniel shrugged, already bored with the conversation. "Yeah, we upgraded last month. Found a good deal." Good deal. The statement had a grocery receipt stuck behind it. $4, $9.80 from a boutique furniture store. His wife, Erin, appeared from the hallway. Her face froze for half a second before forming a smile too bright to be real. "Oh, hi. We weren't expecting you." "I know," I answered. This was spontaneous. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, quick, nervous. Silent conversation. "Can we talk?" I asked. "All three of us." Erin's smile disappeared. She folded her arms. "About what?" I walked into the living room without waiting to be invited further. Marie always said, "You don't ask permission to talk to family." Turns out she'd never met this version of them. I put the pie dish on a marble island. Another expensive upgrade. Daniel followed, chewing the last bite of his sandwich. Look, if this is about the transfer, we're getting the situation under control. The bank had some glitch. A glitch, Aaron repeated, nodding like a bobblehead. I opened my folder and gently placed one of the printed statements on the counter. Is this part of the glitch? They both froze. It was the Vegas booking. $3,860.99. Booked on my birthday. Daniel swallowed. His hands jammed into his pockets. Uncle, we told you. We're going to pay you back. You didn't have to. You didn't tell me anything, I said calmly. He blinked. I spoke slowly, intentionally, the way Marie used to when she didn't want to fight but wanted truth. You didn't call on my birthday. You didn't write. You didn't visit. But you managed to take almost $8,000 that same morning to check into the win. Aaron scoffed. Actually scoffed. Are you seriously here to interrogate us? Over a family trip? A trip paid with my money, I replied. She rolled her eyes. You always say it like we stole something. You gave us your PIN. Yes, I said, and I'm realizing now that I shouldn't have. Daniel stepped forward, face flushing. We're family. Families help each other. You're alone, Uncle. You don't have kids. Who else are you going to give your money to? The church? The cat shelter? Maybe, I said. At least they wouldn't take me for granted. He clenched his jaw. We don't take you for granted. I slid the next page toward him. Then what is this? It was their investment roadmap, printed from Aaron's laptop. I'd found it accidentally months ago when she left her email open on my computer while helping me update antivirus software. She hadn't logged out. The document listed, projected inheritance, $312,000 to $355,000. Ongoing contributions from Uncle, EST $18,000 yearly. Savings goal achieved by allocating his support. Travel fund, powered by Uncle. House upgrades, Uncle funded. Debt relief, Uncle assistance expected. Every dollar of my savings had been categorized like livestock in a ledger. Aaron's face lost all color. Daniel looked to the floor. I waited. So, I said quietly, this is what I am to you. A future payout. A revenue stream. Daniel finally looked up, defensive. You're twisting this. We were planning responsibly. We're a family. We're supposed to share resources. Funny, I said, because I never saw any of your resources being shared. Just mine. No offense, Aaron snapped, but you don't even spend your money. You live like a monk. It's better if it goes to someone who's actually building a future. The words hit harder than I expected, not because of their cruelty, but because of their casualness. To them, it wasn't cruelty. It was entitlement. You're old, she added. You don't even travel. You don't need all that cash sitting there. Daniel nodded quickly. Exactly. You should be happy to help us. I studied them. These two young adults who hadn't visited me once in the hospital last winter, who used my home address for packages so they could dodge porch thieves, who called only when a bill came due, who forgot my birthday but remembered my bank PIN. Finally, I said, I have one more question. They tensed. When you made this plan, this lovely spreadsheet, did you ever write down anything about me? Like checking in? Visiting? Sharing a meal? Or was I only a dollar sign to you? Aaron said nothing. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. I think, he muttered, you're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said. I think I'm finally seeing the proportion clearly. I picked up my folder, left the pie dish behind, walked to the door. Daniel called after me. We still need $12,400 for the mortgage. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I opened the door but didn't turn around. You made it hard, I said, when you started loving my PIN more than my presence. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not gently, not this time. And as I walked to my car, the knot in my stomach was gone, replaced by something steadier. Resolve. Cold, clean, and long overdue. People think revenge is loud, explosive, like fireworks or broken glass. But the truth is the first real act of revenge I ever committed began in absolute silence. Me sitting alone in the kitchen at 7:05 the next morning, stirring a cup of black tea with a shaking hand. Not from fear, from clarity. The kind of clarity a man gets once he finally admits the obvious. They don't see you. They see your wallet wearing your clothes. I put on my beige jacket, The one Marie used to tease me about for being too librarian for a man who can fix a water heater. I didn't bother shaving. I didn't bother eating. I just picked up my folder of statements and walked out the front door into a gray, humid morning. The sky looked like wet paper. Fitting. The local branch of Crescent River Credit Union sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd, squeezed between a defunct bakery and an overpriced dog spa. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and stale printer ink. I walked up to the counter, where a young clerk with dyed lavender hair greeted me with the kind of cheerfulness only the very young or very naive can maintain for 8 hours a day. "Good morning. How can we help you today?" "I need to speak to someone about my accounts," I said. "Of course. Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but I believe the matter is time-sensitive." She must have heard something in my tone because she straightened, typed quickly, and said, "Miss Thompson can see you in a moment." Miss Thompson was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and the posture of someone who'd spent 20 years fixing other people's mistakes without screaming. She ushered me into her office, and I sat down in the chair opposite her desk. "What can I do for you today?" she asked gently. I opened my folder and slid the top statement toward her. "I believe I need to make several changes," I said. "To everything." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. She read the statement, then the next page, then the next. By the 4th page, she inhaled sharply through her nose. "Mr. Hale, were these authorized?" "Technically," I said, "but not knowingly." She looked at me with the full weight of a professional who had seen every type of financial disaster, but still believed in treating people like humans. "What would you like to do?" "I want to change my PIN," I said, "for every card, every account, and I want to remove all external access." "That's easy enough. We can do that right now." She typed swiftly. I watched the numbers on the screen shift, replace, disappear. "And I want new passwords. For online banking, mobile banking, everything." "We can set that up too." "Good," I said, and closed the savings sub-account ending in 4421. She looked surprised. "That account has quite a balance." "It's vulnerable," I replied. "Shut it down." And she did. One click. Hundreds of hours of labor, sweat, and sacrifice relocated to an internal holding vault waiting for reassignment. I felt lighter. Next, I pointed to the list of recurring transfers. Some were legitimate. Most were not. "I want to cancel these," I said, pointing to 3 monthly withdrawals. $950, family support. $300, joint utilities. $420, miscellaneous funds transfer, translation, whatever Daniel wanted that week. Miss Thompson paused. "You understand this may cause friction." "My life already has friction," I said. "At least this friction protects my retirement." She nodded and canceled each one manually. It felt like removing leeches from my skin. "Do you want to reopen access for your nephew under a limited profile?" she asked. "Some clients do that after fraud issues. Just read-only access." "No," I said immediately. "No digital access. No phone access. And if he calls pretending to be me, don't reset anything. Don't help him. Don't even confirm I have accounts here." Her eyes softened. "Understood. And one more thing," I added. "Yes. I want to create a trust." That got her full attention. "A trust? For your estate?" "Yes. And I want the beneficiaries changed." "To whom?" I placed 3 envelopes on her desk. She opened the first. Pinewood Rehabilitation Center, the hospice where Marie spent her last weeks. The second, Riverbend Scholarship Fund, for local kids who couldn't afford community college fees. The third, Crescent Library Friends Association, the library that had become my sanctuary these past few years. Her eyes glistened just a little. "No family members?" she asked quietly. "They have enough," I said. "Enough of mine, at least." She nodded and began typing up the paperwork. 3 hours passed. Forms printed. Forms signed. Fingers cramped. Wrists sore. My signature, thin, shaking a little, repeated itself on dozens of lines. Finally, Miss Thompson pushed the last document toward me. "This finalizes the trust. Once you sign here, your nephew and his wife will no longer be beneficiaries." I picked up the pen. For a moment, I pictured Daniel as a toddler, running barefoot in my backyard, chasing soap bubbles, laughing so hard he hiccuped. I pictured the little boy who slept on my chest during thunderstorms. The teenager who cried into my shoulder after his mother passed. And then I pictured the drawer full of unreturned calls, the forgotten birthdays, the restaurant bills charged to my card, the investment spreadsheet with my name labeled asset base. The pen touched the paper. I signed. Miss Thompson took the document, stamped it, and said softly, "It's done." I stepped out into the daylight feeling 10 pounds lighter. A free man. A man who had finally stopped digging his own grave with generosity. A light drizzle had started, a thin mist that clung to my jacket and cooled my face. I walked slowly, savoring something I hadn't felt in years. Control, not vengeance. Not yet, but the blueprint of vengeance had begun. One thought played in my mind with each step. They forgot my birthday, but soon they'll remember this day forever. The day I changed the code, and then changed everything else. If you live long enough, you learn something important. People don't panic when you give them money. They panic when you stop. It took less than 48 hours for the storm to hit. I was in my living room on a quiet Sunday morning, trying to coax my ancient radio into picking up the jazz station Marie loved. Her favorite song, Misty, had just started its soft climb when it happened. A violent knock shook the door. Not a polite tap, not a neighborly visit, a demand. Then the shouting began. "Uncle, Uncle, open the door. Don't ignore us." I closed my eyes for a second, inhaled slowly, and set the radio down. So it begins, I thought. I opened the door. Daniel stood on my porch, eyes wide and wild, hair unbrushed like he'd sprinted out of the house the moment his wallet screamed. Aaron stood behind him, arms crossed tightly, lips pursed so sharply they could have cut glass. The neighbors across the street paused their dog, walked to watch. Public. Perfect. "Good morning," I said. "Don't good morning me," Daniel snapped, stepping forward so aggressively that I instinctively braced. "Why did you change the pin?" There it was. The family battle cry. "I believe," I said calmly. "That's none of your concern anymore." His face turned a shade of red, usually reserved for overheating engines. "None of my? Are you kidding me?" He ran his hand through his hair. "We have bills, Uncle. Mortgage. Utilities. We're late. Because of you." Aaron shoved a piece of paper toward me. An overdue notice. As if I were the cause. Not the solution they'd leached for years. "You always covered the mortgage," she said through gritted teeth. "And now, suddenly you don't? You can't do that to us." "I didn't cover your mortgage," I corrected gently. "I bailed you out. Repeatedly. Without thanks. That's what family does," she shot back. I stepped outside onto the porch, closing the door behind me. For a moment, all three of us stood in the crisp air, their anger warming the space between us. "What changed?" Daniel demanded. "What? You mad we forgot your birthday?" We said sorry. He hadn't, and we both knew it. "Daniel," I said, "we need to talk." "No," he said, voice cracking, "we need the pin." I smiled sadly. Exactly my point. I reached into the folder I'd prepared and handed him a stack of printed transactions. He glanced down. Recognition washed over his face. These are yours," I said. "Every transfer, every vacation, every medical bill that never existed, every jet ski, every expensive dinner. And this," I tapped a page, "is the Vegas booking on my birthday. Lovely hotel, by the way." Daniel froze. Aaron's eyes darted between the pages and my face. "You went through our expenses?" she hissed. "You used my money," I replied. "I believe that makes it fair." Daniel crumpled the papers in his fist. "You're trying to make us look bad." "Son," I said, stepping closer, "you don't need my help to do that." He blinked, and for the first time, the fight drained from his eyes, replaced by something like fear. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "We thought you were fine with helping." I was. Before I realized I wasn't helping. I was enabling. "We're supposed to share," Aaron said desperately. "You have more than enough." "That's the difference," I said. "I earned it. You expect it." Silence. Except for a crow cawing somewhere on a telephone line. Finally, Daniel tried one last tactic. "You can't just cut us off," he whispered. "We counted on you." "I know," I said. "And that's the problem." I handed him the second envelope. He opened it. His face fell completely. What is this?" A copy of my new will, I said. Updated 2 days ago. Aaron grabbed the papers from his hand, as if she could change the words by reading faster. Her voice trembled. Why, you removed us? Yes. But who gets everything? She stammered. Not you, I said simply. Daniel's jaw hung open. She left you everything, he said, meaning Marie. She trusted you to take care of us. And I did. Longer than I should have. You have no right, Aaron started, but I shut that down with a raised finger. I have every right. My accounts, my savings, my decisions, not yours. Daniel staggered back a step, like the air had knocked him. You can't do this, he whispered. You can't just end our future. I'm not ending it. I corrected. I'm removing myself from the parts you built out of mine. His anger returned in a sudden, ugly wave. You're a selfish old man, he spat. You think this makes you a hero? It makes you pathetic. You'll die alone. And when you do, don't expect us at the funeral. I nodded slowly. That's fair, I said. I won't expect you. I walked back toward my front door, the morning sun warming my back. But, Daniel, I added softly, turning once more, you should know something. They both looked up. When I change a pen, I change the will. And when I change the will, I'll let silence finish the sentence. I change your future. I stepped inside and closed the door. This time, gently, with finality. Outside, I heard them shouting, at me, at each other, at the unfairness of a world in which their free ride had reached the last station. I didn't listen. I walked to the radio, turned up the volume, and let Ella Fitzgerald drown them out. They had wanted access. What they got was the bill. And this was only the beginning. For the first time in years, the house felt breathable. Not quiet in the lonely way it used to be. Quiet in the clean way, like someone had finally swept the dust out of my life. Daniel and Aaron didn't come back that day, but they didn't stay away long. People addicted to your money don't ever disappear. They orbit. They circle. They wait for the next withdrawal. And when it doesn't come, it shakes them deeply. The morning after the confrontation, I made myself baked cod with lemon and thyme. A simple meal. A normal meal. A meal not interrupted by a vibrating phone asking for an emergency transfer. I salted the fish lightly, slid it onto my old cast-iron skillet, the one Marie seasoned herself back in 1985, and listened to the comforting hiss as it hit the heat. The sizzle sounded like a cleansing, like steam releasing from a pressure valve inside my chest. I carried my plate to the small kitchen table, opened the window, and let the morning breeze bring in the scent of the neighbor's lilac bush. For the first time in years, eating felt like nourishment, not guilt. I wasn't paying for anyone else's dinner, just my own. The calls began. At first, Daniel tried the sweet approach. Uncle, please. Let's talk. You're being irrational. Then the professional approach. Uncle, we need to establish a plan. You can't just make big financial changes without notifying us. Then the panicked approach. We're drowning. Do you understand that? You left us drowning. I listened to the voicemails, but didn't answer. One of life's underrated pleasures. Letting a phone ring without feeling obligated to pick it up. Then a retreat. Her voice wasn't sweet. Not even close. You think this is over? You think you can just walk away? We were counting on you. That money was practically ours. You owe us that. I deleted that voicemail without listening to the end. Entitlement has a pitch you can recognize by the first syllable. They sent a mutual acquaintance, a neighbor of theirs, a woman named Carol, who knocked on my door with a forced, pitying smile. Oh, sweetheart, she said, leaning her head sideways as if she were observing a wounded animal. They're very upset. You know how young couples get. Money trouble is stressful. I'm aware, I said, seeing as I funded most of their stress for 7 years. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I offered her a cup of tea. She declined. She left flustered. Word spreads fast in small communities, especially when the oldest man on the street suddenly stops being the family ATM. My world became beautifully, blissfully small. I repaired my old Zenith radio, replaced the capacitor, polished the dial, cleaned the dust from the speaker cone. When I turned it on, a warm hum filled the room, followed by the soft crackle of jazz notes. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd misplaced. I reorganized my bookshelf. dusted the spines of Marie's gardening guides, found a pressed clover between the pages of her 1978 Farmer's Almanac. I walked to the library and returned a stack of novels. Mrs. Glenmore, the elderly librarian with the soft voice, poured me a paper cup of mint tea. "You look lighter," she said simply. "I am," I replied. That night, I slept without waking once. The first uninterrupted sleep in decades, perhaps. Daniel tried a new strategy, guilt. A long text message, paragraphs, how I'd abandoned them, how I'd violated trust, how family shared everything, how Marie would be ashamed of me. I sat on my bed and read it twice. Then I whispered, "Marie knew the difference between love and use." I deleted the message. A letter arrived. Certified mail. Thick envelope. Law firm header. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. A request for discussion regarding familial financial obligations. Obligations. The audacity. I set aside. Made myself a grilled cheese sandwich with tomato soup. Watched an old black and white movie on VHS. My living room glowed in warm lamplight. Peace wrapped around me like a soft quilt. I received a phone call I did answer. From the Pinewood Rehabilitation Center, the first beneficiary of my trust. "Mr. Hale," the director said, voice shaking slightly, "we received the documentation and the endowment. You've done something extraordinary." I closed my eyes. "No," I murmured. "You all did. You helped my wife die with dignity. I'm just giving some dignity back." She cried. I didn't. Not because I wasn't moved, but because I felt settled, like something had finally found its proper place. I stood on my porch at sunset, watching the last orange streak fade behind the rooftops. The air smelled like cut grass and grill smoke. A normal evening. A peaceful one. Inside, my phone was face down on the table, still buzzing periodically with attempts from Daniel and Aaron. But the house no longer vibrated with anxiety. The sound passed through me like wind. My home felt like mine again. My mind felt like mine again. As darkness fell, I whispered to the empty yard. You can survive almost anything once you stop financing your own destruction. And I believed it. Peace, real peace, came not when they apologized. They never would. But when I stopped expecting them to, I didn't know what they'd try next. I only knew they hadn't given up. People who lose a fortune they never earned rarely walk away quietly. And I could feel it. A new wave coming, one final attempt to regain access, to claw back control. But I was ready. This time, I wasn't the quiet old man who gave until he broke. I was the one who healed by saying no. They showed up again on the 21st day. Not with fists this time, not with shouting from the sidewalk, but with something far more dangerous, a forced calm. The kind of calm people wear when they've rehearsed their lines in the car, practicing sympathy like actors who've forgotten how real emotion feels. I saw their silhouettes through the frosted glass of my front door. Daniel, standing stiff, Aaron behind him, her mouth pressed into that razor-thin smile she used whenever she wanted to look gentle but couldn't hide the calculation in her eyes. I opened the door halfway. No reason to invite the cold into my house. Or them. "Uncle," Daniel said, smoothing his shirt as if ironing out his guilt, "we'd like to talk." "No," I answered, "but we can speak here." His jaw flexed at that. Aaron blinked too quickly, but they stayed. "We've been thinking," Daniel began, carefully modulating his voice. "Maybe things got out of hand. Maybe none of us handled the situation well." I almost laughed. There is nothing quite like watching someone attempt to rewrite history while you're standing right there holding the original. "I handled it fine," I said. He blinked. "Right, but look, let's just reset. Let's find a solution that works for everyone." He reached into a folder he was carrying, pulled out a printed agreement, and held it out. "We drafted something. Just a small arrangement. Financial oversight. Nothing major. You'll still control your accounts. We'll just help manage some things so you're not overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. A polite word for old. For confused. For exploitable. Erin chimed in, her voice sweetened with the kind of sugar that always hides poison. "You won't have to stress about bills anymore. We'll take care of everything. Together. Together." A nice concept, if they had ever been interested in anything other than what I owned. I watched them both for a long moment. Then I asked the question their entire performance hinged on. "If I hadn't changed the will," I said, would you be here right now? Silence. Complete and perfect silence. The kind that answers a question far better than any lie could. I didn't wait for their excuses. Instead, I stepped outside and walked halfway down the driveway toward the bin sitting by the curb. "Come here," I said without raising my voice. They followed, confused. I flipped open the recycling bin. Inside, under fragments of envelopes and torn cardboard, lay thousands of thin white strips, shredded paper, curled and soft at the edges. Daniel frowned. What is that?" "My past," I said. Aaron leaned forward. "Those look like bank papers." They were. More silence. "Every statement," I continued. "Every transfer. Every account summary. Every trust draft. All of it shredded. All of it gone." Aaron's face twitched. "Why would you do that?" "So I wouldn't forget," I said. "So I wouldn't be tempted to believe the story you're trying to sell me right now. The one where this," I gesture between us, "is love instead of dependency dressed up as affection." Daniel's voice cracked, the mask slipping. "Uncle, this is extreme." "No," I said gently. "Extreme was what I tolerated from you for years." He took a breath, straightened his spine, and went for the threat he had been saving. "If you don't undo the trust changes," he said, words sharp as broken glass, "we'll take legal action. You can't just cut us out. You owe us something when you die." There it was. The truth at last. I nodded toward him. "Thank you, Daniel." "For what?" he snapped. "For finally telling me what I already knew." I turned and walked back toward the house. Halfway up the steps, I stopped and looked over my shoulder. "Check your mailbox in the morning," I said. They didn't understand, not then. They stormed off in a flurry of muttered curses and angry footfalls. Their car peeled away from the curb, tires screeching like the sound of their entitlement hitting a wall. Before sunrise, I slipped an envelope into their mailbox. A simple white envelope, no decoration, no flourish. Inside it, a letter, my last to them. That afternoon, while I water my hydrangeas, I saw them step outside, saw Daniel Tier open the envelope, saw his face change. Erin grabbed the letter, her manicured fingers shaking as she read aloud. "I changed the code. Then I changed the will. And now, every time you get nothing, you'll remember the day you gave me nothing in return." The paper fluttered from her hand like an injured bird. Daniel crushed it and kicked the side of their mailbox, so hard it dented inward. Aaron screamed something I didn't bother to decipher. I just continued watering the hydrangeas. They'd had a dry week. They needed the attention. And that was the end of it. No more threats. No more guilt wrapped as family. No more claws trying to pull me back into their sinking ship. They would tell the world I was cruel. They would paint themselves as victims. People always do when their free ride ends. But I hadn't lost a family. I had simply stopped pretending I still had one. That night, with the house quiet and the world finally still, I sat in Marie's old armchair and whispered into the dark. They will remember me now, every single time they get nothing.